And welcome to A Podcast Divided. I'm Daniel, and I'm a Cubs fan.
I'm Andy, and I'm his friend, unfortunately. I'm also a Sox fan.
And this is A Podcast Divided after the intro.
Your Daily Cubs White Sox podcast, the best place for all the baseball debate you need.
And welcome, everybody, to A Podcast Divided.
Yeah, we're here again. Hello. Greetings, salutations, guten tag.
And we don't have another signing to talk about. However, there's lots of potential signings that can happen. And today we're going to be talking about those. First with Bellinger, focusing on the main one. And then, when will the White Sox contend? Because this White Sox team has made lots of improvements. We talked about them yesterday. But when will they go from getting better to being good? Because they're on the right track right now, I'd say so. But anyways, we're going to start off with Bellinger, right? So, Bellinger, obviously a free agent. A little recap. He had that great 2019 MVP season. Then he had the 2 years when he was the worst player in MLB. And he signs with the Cubs on this deal where the Cubs give him a 1-year contract. So it's a prove-it deal. And he ends up having an amazing year. Not MVP.
He proved it, though.
A really good year. And for the Bellinger that it was the Bellinger for the Bellinger from last year, I think teams are ready to pay a lot more. But the issue is there consistency in him? Because we haven't seen it so far in his career. And I mean, like, I'm trying to find his BABIP right now because I like looking at stats like that. But the issue is it's kind of hard to find some stats, but he's definitely been a solid player in spurts. And I'd say a lot of the decision in signing him, at least personally, would be how much money does he want? And his market, we talked about this also a tiny bit yesterday, but we didn't really mention it that much. The market for him is going down. There were talks of him getting $300 million. Now 200 is pushing it. And I don't think the Cubs should go over 200, definitely. But, I mean, he's the biggest bat left on the market, and the Cubs need that bat. And the Cubs are at the stage where they're going to have to get him, even though it's a risk, in my opinion. I think they have to make this deal. Hoskins not going to cut it for the offense.
He's not even on the Cubs yet. But
yeah, well, I mean,
he might not even be on the Cubs ever.
I know. I'm just thinking, like, potential signings, like just getting Hoskins and saying we got all the hairs. I mean, we didn't even get a hair yet, or we got that Bush guy, but he's never even been good in the MLB yet. He's barely played, you know.
He's young though.
We need more bats, right?
Yeah, I mean you do. You're not a good team yet.
I think that's a little bit half true, half biased. We definitely were carried kind of by Bellinger last year. And we got some lucky years like Gomes. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was last year, but we have a lot of big pieces, but we need to make sure those pieces can go together. And when you have all these guys who are good, but they're not stars, they're not like big, really big players, that the guys that signed the big contracts. I mean, you need that guy to center your team around. And the Cubs right now, there's no one. Like, whenever I hear someone being asked, like, who's your favorite Cubs player? Like, it's like, I don't know. Like, personally, when I'm asked, I'm like, well, I guess I can say Swanson, but he's not the guy you'd normally choose because he's a defensive shortstop.
And personally, in my opinion, and the stats would agree with me, he didn't have that great of a year last year. Like he had an okay year. He had a dare I say good year, but he wasn't even that good. Like he did not live up to his contract.
Well, I mean, he was great on defense, and I
defense, but he didn't produce in the back.
But I think that a lot of people like to talk about, and I think for good reason, the fact that at the end of the year when the Cubs collapsed, he was the guy who they gave out a big contract the previous offseason, and he was the guy who batted, I believe, 100 something, one something. And I mean, if you're gonna give a guy 188 million, or that's about how much he got, and then in the time when you need him to hit, and he doesn't hit, who do you look for on the team to get going? Like, what are we gonna get? Wisdom back? like he needed to hit. Definitely, I agree with you. And like that's kind of showing like we do need a bat. And Bellinger will be that if we sign him, unless he underperforms. Because I mean, what do you think the odds are? Like the team that signs Bellinger, he becomes a Hayward. Like
it'd be hilarious, especially if you guys sign him.
I mean, that happened with Hayward, right? He had a good year, and then the Cubs are like, "Please come, we'll throw a bag of money at you," and then he ended up being the guy who you were sad that you had to pay him, but he was under contract, right?
Yep.
And Boris is not guaranteeing. Like he's gonna get a guaranteed contract for Bellinger.
For sure. Scott Boras is every GM's worst enemy.
Is it just me, or does he control like most of the good players? Like I think he has like 40% of the MLB like manager.
For sure, yeah, because everyone wants him.
But how does he even like negotiate? He has like so many people to like. He manages Hoskins, I believe, too.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants, like every player would want Scott Boras as their agent because they know that Scott Boras is going to get him a lot of money.
And he performs that, but he's pretty annoying for teams. You have to admit.
Oh yeah, every GM's worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though because you think about the Cubs signing Suzuki and Amanga, and you wonder, like, can the Cubs even compete with Boris's negotiations? Like, for a player that they could have signed under different circumstances because they're managed by Boris. Like, I saw someone tweet that Bellinger might even feel feelings that like, oh, he wants to be at the Cubs convention because he loved it here, but maybe Boris because
How
Boris
do you know?
is managing him. Well, it's speculation, but
speculation. So you don't know that he loved it here. What if he hated it here?
True. Oh no, he loved it here. That's not speculation. He said that in a lot of interviews, unless he was lying, but I don't think so.
He was probably lying.
But like,
he probably liked that he was good, but you know, it's the Cubs. How can you ever like being on the Cubs?
You know, that's a debate we'll never end. But the point definitely though is that Boris, I'm not sure how he manages people, but he might even be managing where like Bellinger's like, maybe we should go with the Cubs, and Boris is like, I'll do that. I mean, I'm your agent. I have to do what you want, but also, at the end of the day, we want to get the most money, and it wouldn't be that smart to just go to the Cubs and say, we'll take less money just because you want to play there. And then Bellinger's like, he's like, Cody, you know, I don't know if that's the best way to go. And Bellinger's like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. But I don't know. Bellinger should be on the Cubs, but it's this whole thing that I don't even know if we should talk about it now. I feel like we could even have a podcast about it, but I'll just briefly mention it. I guess having Kurt Counsell and losing David Ross and spending all that money, did that affect how active the Cubs are and will be in the free agent market?
Yes.
And I mean, we could go very deep into that, but I mean, this market this year was a lot less active. Like last year, you saw a lot more signings, but also like maybe I know that the Cubs, like I know they have like their coach's budget, but in the players' budget, but in the end, Ricketts is paying the same money. He gives the team the same amount of money, and then some of the money just gets allocated to the coaches. Like, They might have taken some players' money away. I don't know. And I mean, there's also the argument that like, okay, so the Cubs kind of sent very negative vibes because Ross was good, and then they just decided to fire him, and that might make some people not want to come to the Cubs. However, in contrast to that, you have to remember in 2015 or 2014 offseason, I guess technically, it's like after 2014, the Cubs when they fired Rick Renteria, it was like a very similar situation, right? Like Renteria, everyone liked him, but then they fired him just because you can't pass up this opportunity with Madden. And same with Council. So hopefully Bellinger doesn't decide, oh, I miss Ross. But hopefully
That'd be hilarious.
Hopefully Council is like, oh, I want to play for this great manager. So anyways, we'll see about the Cubs if hopefully they make some moves soon. And now after this break, we're going to talk about when will the White Sox contend. So we talk about them a lot, and we're going to be doing it again because we only have one sponsor, SeatGeek, your best.
All right.
Yeah, they're our favorite people nowadays. I mean, like you can get the best seats on all of the internet, and if you use code FortBoys for $20 off, that works because with all our channels, then you will get $20 off your first purchase, and that will just be a big help for going to your next game. So use code FortBoys on SeatGeek for $20 off your first purchase. Now we're back from our break, and Andy, let's hear about when will the White Sox contend?
Oh boy! Well, first I have to say that I never thought that I would be having to have this conversation with you in 2024 now, because I thought that by now the White Sox will already win the World Series.
I forgot it was 2024.
Yeah, I was about to say 2023, but then I looked at the date because I have that on my computer, and I just saw 4 instead of 3. But anyway, it's very tough saying that the White Sox will have to wait another, I would say, 5 years to contend, which by then we might have another stadium.
5.
Yeah, 5. I'm starting with 5.
I would have said 2 or 3.
To contend for the World Series?
Yeah.
No. We don't have a good farm system. We need to develop players to be a contender. That's how the Dodgers are so good. They have a good farm system. That's how the Braves are so good. That's how the Orioles are so good because they have homegrown talent. That's why the Mets are so bad, because all they've done is sign players. And when you sign players for a bunch of money, and when you trade for players and give them big old contracts, it's not a team that has really any base. So that's why the White Sox have to rebuild and get a new farm system, a better farm system. And how do you do that? You trade the big names, which we don't even have anymore. I mean, they're still in CC, Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada, maybe. We can possibly flip them for a good few farm system pieces. Now, I am aware that the White Sox have been making good signings, but it's nowhere near Ohtani or Soto or Nola. It's nothing like that. It's just a bunch of bench pieces, which I don't mind at all. I really don't. Go ahead, sign a bunch of bench players. I don't really care. I mean, do what you can for the White Sox to be good in 5 years, which, like I said last podcast, we are in a very awkward position where we don't know if we are rebuilding or retooling. But I think by the trade deadline this year, we're going to know if we're going to be a good team in 2 years or 5 years. 101 losses. Yeah, thanks a lot, Daniel. You're really keeping this podcast equal.
But yeah, no, I think you're definitely right, because you have to remember that. I mean, even if you sign Ohtani, like the Angels with Ohtani and Trout still were very mediocre at best. And you have to build with a farm system, like you said, because even if you're the Mets and you have all the money in the world, I mean, that's a perfect example that you just think we're set. Like the Dodgers spend money, but they also have the farm system. That's why they're
exactly.
The best team. So that it's like the perfect mix. And I think it's smart for the White Sox not to just overspend now, but
yeah, I don't think we will because we when we were actually like in contention a few years ago, we didn't overspend. So why would we ever do it now when we have had, like you stated, 101 losses? Put that down, Daniel. Okay. 108 years. Yeah, how about that? Put that in.
Yeah.
Okay, where was I? Okay, yeah. So the White Sox, they're not going to be good for, I would say, 5 years when we trade all of our players, maybe even Luis Robert Jr., but I doubt it. We're probably going to end up trading him by the time his contract's up because we don't like signing players and, having legacies or anything like that. That's crazy talk. So, yeah, it's tough to say right now, but I would say once we get a new stadium or once, because I don't even know if we're going to get a new stadium, it could just be a major renovation because let's be honest, Comiskey does need a renovation or two, or we could just move to a new stadium, but that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But I would say when we get like a hypothetical new stadium, so around like 2028, that's when we can contend again.
2028. Yeah, I mean, think about like, weren't the White Sox rebuilding like before 2021 or 2020? I believe
2020 was like the transition year. It was like after rebuilding but before contention.
Like last.
It was that awkward transition year. It was like the puberty of baseball contention.
Even more awkward because of COVID.
Yeah, even more awkward.
You guys were in the playoffs, though.
We were, but it was a different format, and we lost in the first round. So what are you gonna do?
Both Chicago teams did that. Yeah, I mean that format. Yeah, it was the reason why the Cubs lost too. I firmly believe that. Anyways, so
they lost to the Marlins. If you guys lost to a transition year Marlins, then you're not gonna win to anyone else.
It was, any team can go cold in a 3-game series. We should have been in the NLDS. I mean, we won the division. That's the only year in all of baseball, in all of history, I believe, that the division winner, that the top team did not make it into the playoffs as a seed that gets like the top spot. Like we had to play in the wild card game.
Yeah, it was a weird format, but listen, if it's a wild card game and you lost the wild card game, you're not winning any other playoff series.
Yeah, but you're saying that, but you have to remember this past playoffs, every wild card team, every division team that had to play in the wild card lost and got swept, I believe. So
okay, like that doesn't prove anything. That just proves that you're a bad team.
It proves that it's so random to be in a 3-game series. That's why you don't want to be in a 3-game
series. But that's how teams go to the playoffs, by winning 3-game series. I don't even know what the plural of that is. Yes!
NLDS, NLCS World Series 5-7-7. And
I know that, but almost every series in the regular season is 3 games.
Yes, but your whole season isn't on the line.
You should be used to winning 3-game series when you're in the wild card because you've been doing that all season.
No, you shouldn't.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I've cornered you, friend.
Like, I mean, like you, like it's so random. Over the regular season, it evens out.
So?
Anyway, a division winner should not be. But even now with this format,
it doesn't favor the Cubs, therefore it's wrong.
Even with this format, if you're the third division winner, you have to play in the wild card too. Division winners aren't wild card teams.
Sometimes they are. In the Centrals, they're horrible.
Okay, well, not this year. The Cubs will definitely.
You're an idiot and a half.
The Cubs will not be the last division winner, I have to tell you. There's no way.
I honestly agree with that. You want to know why? Because they won't be a division winner.
I said that they will not be the last. Oh, you said
Yeah, I know. I got creative with your wording.
But yeah, I mean technically that's true, but that you could say that. But I mean, maybe Dodgers and Braves.
Dodgers, Braves, Cardinals, or the Reds. The Reds are definitely going to win the NL Central.
Actually, the Cubs will probably be the third division winner because the amount of wins that the Braves will get will probably be about the Cubs if the Cubs have an amazing year and like everything goes right. Because the Braves are still a force to be reckoned with, just because they haven't been making.
Of course, they are.
Just I feel like it's easy to like downplay them right now, personally, because the Dodgers have been making all these moves, but
I mean, yeah, no, the Braves got like Chris Sale and stuff.
They did,
and they got Aaron Bummer.
I mean, not a big off season like the Dodgers, but they're still a really good team.
Yeah, do not. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Just don't mess with the Braves. Don't mess with Atlanta. Don't mess with Georgia. I just messed with all the Texans, but you know what? Don't mess with Georgia.
Yeah, I mean the White Sox, they're on the way up, but without the farm system. I'm just thinking about the topic, and like some teams that like took really fast rebuilds. Like it's doable, but you really have to hit on a lot of those draft picks really quick.
Yeah, you do.
And if you don't, then you'll be in rebuild forever.
Yeah, and I don't know how I even feel about Colson Montgomery and Jacob Gonzalez. I mean, we don't have the best history of drafting, so I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But my guess is that we're going to be good in like 5 years. But you never know. I thought 3 years ago that we'd be contending and we would have already won the World Series by now. But look where we are. So, yeah that's about it for me at least. What about you, Daniel? Any last words?
Well, the contending part just reminds me about like in the rebuild, like when the Cubs were in like back in like 2012-ish. That's like when Epstein came in, or 2010 or 2011. Like about 5 years is like a good number if you really want to win the World Series, not just like sneak in, but like what the Cubs did back in 2016. Like they were like one of the best teams. They were the best team because they won the World Series. Like if you want to do that, you have to hit on your prospects, and if you have,
I do want to do that. I don't want to be a team that just sneaks into the playoffs every year. I want to be a team that is competing for the top playoff spot, the top of the league in record, and the World Series. I will wait for that.
Well, my friend, I guess you're gonna have to wait a while because 5 years is a good. That's like a pretty good amount to get that.
Yeah, I'll just have to hope for Connor Bedard and Justin Fields to pan out.
Good draft picks is the biggest thing takeaway, I guess, for the White Sox to get better. And for Bellinger, hopefully he signs good. Signs soon. Signs good.
Hopefully he signs good and plays soon.
Well, I think it's time to wrap this up. Thank you guys for listening and watching if you made it this far. Until next time, see you later. This is Locked On.
This is a podcast divided, as you can see directly on the top of your screen. Go check out Locked On Cubs, Locked On White Sox, Locked On whatever. Just go check that out. I don't know. I'm sure. Ditzy Geek.
Bye.
And bye. Go